I don't want you to get mad or anything, but I think that philosophy has ruined a lot of society all throughout history. And I think that it should have died off a long time ago because of its influence in our culture. And I think it's evil.
You think philosophy is evil?
No, man. I don't think philosophy is evil.
Paul said, I did not come to you speaking to you with man's philosophy.
For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. Where is the wise person? Where is the teacher of the law? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe.
Daniel was also trained in all of the sciences in Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar.
And skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans.
You can't just blanket statement say that philosophy is evil.
Are you trying to incorporate philosophy into the text?
Oh, I don't read the Bible really. But if I were to read it, I'd probably read it in like a similar way that I'd read like a fictional story.
That's a problem.
Hold on. I have a different response to that. Okay, you would read it like you would read a Harry Potter book. Fine, great, do it. Even if you were to just read it like a Harry Potter book, then hold yourself accountable to that.
God Leviosa.
Well done, dear.
It's Wingardium Leviosa. Swish and flick.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Stop it, Rod. Stop.
Ronald Weasley. It's Leviosa.
Leviosa. Stop.
Big Leo debates too. Hey, FYI, bro, this is not a debate live. I'm not here to debate people, so.
Yeah, I'm not interested in the debate. I'm interested in the first thing that you said.
Is your name Leo?
Yeah.
Cool, like lion.
I appreciate that. Genuine unbeliever, and I think I'm a good person, so you can ask me questions about that. It doesn't have to be a debate.
Yeah, man, welcome. So, Leo, I'm Daniel. Nice to meet you.
Daniel?
How old are you? Man, I speak with so many 19-year-olds. It's crazy.
Yeah, they're like little goblins on this app.
Like 19 and 23-year-olds. They're like always a pattern of 19 and 23-year-olds. What are you studying?
Currently studying philosophy.
Very nice. What do you want to do with that?
Well, the goal is to hopefully write textbooks for universities in the future. If AI doesn't steal that job.
You want to write textbooks? Bro, here's a reality check. A lot of these textbooks are so outdated that they're still teaching wrong information in the textbooks.
Exactly. That's why we need people to write new textbooks. Better textbooks, you know?
No, what I'm saying is the reality of the situation is by the time you get to that place, it's not like the system that is influencing the certain textbooks being implemented is going to suddenly change, especially for some bright-eyed, bushy-tailed individual like yourself.
Yeah, we're going to
Also,
start a philosophical revolution.
I want to ask you this. Honestly, like, as you're studying philosophy, that's great. But I feel like my personal belief, and I don't want you to get mad or anything, but I think that philosophy has ruined a lot of society all throughout history. And I think that it should have died off a long time ago because of its influence in our culture. And I think it's evil.
You think philosophy is evil?
No, man. I don't think philosophy is evil. I think that anything, regardless of whether it is philosophy, math, or science, it can all be used for evil purposes. But just because it can be used for evil purposes does not make it evil. That's like saying science is evil because people promote the Big Bang Theory. No, I say science is good, but it's a matter of how you interpret the data.
Well, I'm going to say why I think it's evil, because obviously I'm going to support scripture when it comes to it. And Paul warns us heavily against it.
And we know what this new doctrine whereof thou speakest is, for thou bringest certain strange things to our ears. We would know therefore what these things mean. For all the Athenians and strangers which were there spent their time in nothing else, but either to tell or to hear some new thing. Then Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill, and said, Ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things ye are too superstitious. For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship. Him declare I unto you, God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands, neither is worshipped with men's hands as though he needed anything. For in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. For as much then as we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the Godhead is like unto gold or silver or stone, graven by art and man's device.
When we look at philosophy, philosophy is man's way of understanding how things are that they perceive or even themselves. When it comes to theology, that's not man's way of understanding, but rather them getting a revelation from something. So something outside of themselves. And that's something that's very important to have that distinct differences. When we go based off of philosophical understanding, we are changing the definitions of basic terminology and speech that the common people are taught and understand, and we are confusing it into like a code language to where definitions like a person, instead of it meaning a human being, all of a sudden means a reality. And when we speak with a philosophical lens, it causes confusion, which God is not the author of confusion. In fact, Paul said, I did not come to you speaking to you with man's philosophy, but I came to you speaking to you in simplicity of speech.
For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. The intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise person? Where is the teacher of the law? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe.
So we take a language and we confuse it. I'm not even comparing philosophy to science. Science, I agree, is good, but philosophy came from pagan men trying to understand things around them.
Wait, no. Again, philosophy, as you stated, is man's way of understanding the world around them. And there's nothing wrong with that. Daniel was also trained in all of the sciences in Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar.
The king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego.
But he did not lean on it. He always gave final authority to God. So philosophy, science, or math, any of these things can be used to either glorify God or to reject God. And so yes, many philosophies have been misused to misdirect humans from the philosophy of God because they are wise in their own eyes.
O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, and oppositions of science falsely so called, which some professing have erred concerning the faith. Grace be with thee. Amen.
And they think that the understanding of man is it. But you have to understand, even people like
Aristotle
believe in the unmoved mover.
Everything in motion requires a cause for that change. Thus a moving first cause could not be first. From the fact that it is in motion, it would itself require a mover. Moreover, if all physical beings are subject to motion and change, the first mover is not changing, and so is not physical, but nevertheless active with a non-physical actuality. There had to be a first unmoved mover, Aristotle argued, which is immaterial and which is most actual, with the greatest kind of actuality. For Aristotle, the greatest kind of actuality there was the act of thinking, and so the first unmoved mover was thinking, and if the greatest of thinking, it was thinking about the greatest object of thought, which of course would be itself. Thus Aristotle describes the unmoved mover as thought thinking itself, and he calls it God. It causes all the motion, change, generation, and corruption on the earth by initiating and sustaining the motion of the celestial spheres, which transfer their motion and actuality down to earthly movers.
That's why I'm bringing this up, because if he's going to try to understand God or the Bible through philosophy, it's not going to work, because you might understand the Trinity through the Catholic.
No, but that's a different dimension, bro.
Right.
You can't just blanket statement say that philosophy is evil. Philosophy can be used for evil purposes to misguide people. But no, Socrates said to know thyself. And that is something that every human being, whether you're a Christian or not, should come to the realization. If you don't know who the fuck you are, then you are not very productive to society.
Yeah, there's some truth that people hold, but ultimately what they've done is that with this secret language, and they're not teaching people it, the fact that you have to go to university to learn these.
No, that's getting into Gnosticism.
Again, if we take this Gnostic concept seriously, the Gnostics believe that there is an all-good, transcendent God behind everything that's so good that he's completely pure spirit, completely uncorruptible, and therefore anything material must not be of that. It must be, in fact, evil. And so where did it come from? And they've got a mythology for it, but it doesn't matter. This character called the Demiurge comes into being through a series of kind of cosmic accidents in the pleroma, as they call this. And Demiurge comes from the Greek demiurgos. Demiurgos means artisan or builder. He's the architect of the world. So he builds out the world, but in fact, he's a demon. And so he builds out the world as a prison. He's giving his second-rate sacrifices. He's not doing what he should. God's telling him if he does what he should, things will work out. And he's like, no, this system's corrupt.
That's a deeper dimension of philosophy. So again, that's why I'm saying you can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, brother.
Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is because if this gentleman here is thinking he's going to understand the Bible through the philosophy that he's learning in school, Greek philosophy and stuff, he's going to have a bad time, because it's not going to be figured out through man's philosophy. It's going to be found out by the revelation of Jesus Christ.
Yes, that is a true statement, but again, that does not mean that all of philosophy is evil.
I'm just pointing out that Aristotle's philosophy, Philos of Alexandria's philosophy and stuff, the roots of it came from, unfortunately, pagan men. And when they incorporate it into religion, that's a problem. That's why it's evil. But yes, you are correct that if just in general, me trying to understand an apple is not evil. What philosophy does is man will take an example of two apples and they'll try to equate it to us in a way. That would be what philosophy does, is they try to bring wisdom to ultimately retract it back to themselves. Trying to understand stuff around you is not inherently evil, but the men that are the roots of philosophy, which has been incorporated into the Catholic Church and into our major school systems, a lot of that stuff is evil. And the reason it's evil is because they're not being open and honest from a young age what these definitions of these terms are and how to apply them. In fact, you got to wait till you get to university to really learn about it. That's evil, because that's called misleading and deception. Leo, so when you're reading the Bible and you're learning about Jesus, are you trying to incorporate philosophy into the text? Or are you just reading it to read it?
Oh, I don't read the Bible really. But if I were to read it, I'd probably read it in like a similar way that I'd read like a fictional story.
That's a problem, right? Because when I read the Quran, or if somebody asks me to read the Book of Mormon, which they have, and they're claiming it's the truth, I'm going to look into it without a bias. Otherwise, you're not honest with the text. You'll never be honest with the text. If you say you're going to read something like Harry Potter, a fictional book.
Hold on. I have a different response to that. Okay, you would read it like you would read a Harry Potter book. Fine, great, do it. Even if you were to just read it like a Harry Potter book, then hold yourself accountable to that. Now let's break down the operational definition of what it would mean to read the Bible like we would read a Harry Potter book. First, we would have to suspend disbelief.
God Leviosa.
Well done, dear. It's Wingardium Leviosa. Swish and flick.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Stop it, Ron. Stop.
Ronald Weasley. It's Leviosa.
Leviosa. Stop.
Because when we read Harry Potter, we're not sitting there every second saying, he's casting a magic spell with the wand, that's bullshit. So apply that same principle to the Bible. So when Jesus is doing miracles, just take it at face value and keep fucking reading. You understand?
Exactly. That's exactly how I'd read the Bible. Like, I wouldn't like pretend like what's being said is actually true. I would just kind of treat it the same way. Yeah, exactly. Like whenever a wand is used in Harry Potter.
All right. And then number 2, let's move on to the second point. Understand what the fuck you're reading. When you're reading Harry Potter, you know that there's a beginning, middle, and an end. So try to break down what the beginning, middle, and the end is through those 4 different accounts. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Figure out what the message is.
Yeah, for sure.
Also,
Pay
too,
attention.
Like just like in Harry Potter, you know that it's in the setting where, hey, this is a wizard realm. They're wizards. This is the way they speak. This is their culture. Things like that. And when you read Harry Potter, you don't try to insert the mindset of what you've learned at university or what the United States is run under, because I assume that's where you live. You don't incorporate your culture into the show. Just so don't do that when you read the Bible or anything.
Just to illustrate, because when I close my eyes, I see all of this. When you're picturing yourself in shit, what were we just talking? I just derailed myself.
Tell you the truth.